Hi, and we are live on our second episode of Balls to the Wall, the show about track cycling, where we talk about this high speed and exhilarating sport. And today we've got Kerry Jonker as our guest. And for those of you who know Kerry, she's represented South Africa on the road and on the track, and very successfully so at World Champs on the road, as well as Commonwealth Games, and then on the track at AFCON as well, and also at some of the Nations Cup. So welcome, Kerry. We very eager to hear what it takes to chase your dreams on two wheels. And I know you've started sport from a young age, and we're very curious to hear about your journey.
Thank you for having me.
That's a pleasure. Okay, so first thing is, we know you currently live in Australia, but what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up, and yeah, how did you get into sport?
So, born and bred in Cape Town, and then we moved across to Oz. But mom kept her company in Cape Town, so I'd spend about, a third of the year there, and then most of my schooling over this side. Grew up doing all sorts of sports, never focused on one thing, and then started riding bikes for triathlon when I was 17. And then, yeah, I wanted to do triathlon, but then thought, actually, no, there's opportunities in cycling that won't be there when I'm older. So that's why I then started sticking with road cycling, and then eventually picked up track.
Well, that's amazing, and I mean we squeezed buzz through this quite quickly now, and I mean those triathlon days. At what age did you get into that?
I was 17.
17. And yeah, was that just through high school or just other friends? What led to you getting into it?
Just, I loved running, I loved swimming, and I said, okay, well, then I may as well do triathlon, but oh, hang on, I better go learn to ride a bike.
Okay, so that's where you got onto two wheels. I know you still
Yeah.
run and you still enjoy that, and so yeah, and the cycling part of it. Obviously, triathlons are a bit competitive. You have to like go for a time there. But then, how did you progress from triathlons into like racing a bicycle?
Just I was riding with my dad, and then some people said, "Oh, you should go do some criteriums." So that was my first sort of introduction to racing. And then just through varsity, there was a competition, and I said, "Oh, well, I want to go to that. It looks really fun." So then I said, oh, "Okay, I'll go do cycling." So then, yeah, I started doing some road cycling events. And then I always said, okay, hang on, the hardest racing in the world's in Europe. So I either want to go to America or Europe to give the racing a go. But if it's harder than in Europe, then that's where I want to be. So yeah, I went over and just gave it a shot for a few weeks in my varsity break.
And you mentioned something there, criteriums. I mean, as a first timer coming from triathlons, you cycled with your dad, and then you got into criteriums. Where was that, and what was it like, your first race?
I mean, I think my first race was actually more of a camise style um, race, and no, it was super fun. Just like I think there were 10 or 15 women, but because I grew up riding with cyclists, I didn't grow up riding with triathletes. I sort of had the ability to roll turns and be in a bunch. So yeah, it didn't phase me.
Well, yeah, for those of you that know Kerry, she's just got one style of riding, and that's maybe simplifying, but it's all out. And
Yeah, not
I
wrong.
think the higher the speed, the better. I know you get quite frustrated if racing's a bit too slow for your liking.
Yes.
Um, and then, yeah, I mean, you went to Europe. At what age was that? And what was that transition like from someone who's come now through the ranks, who has done some local racing, and then well, now you're onto that scene in Europe.
Well, I just went over just to give it a go for 3 weeks in my break with some very supportive people and friends. So it was a good environment, and they'd all done it before. So it wasn't like I was having to figure it out by myself. And because I went in the summer, it was a time where some of the commuters are slightly easier than, say, the springtime. So it was a really good, positive experience.
And easier. It was a little bit easier. Okay. What
Yeah.
speeds are you talking about easy on that side?
I mean, the speeds are still probably like 40, yeah, 38 to 40 kilometers an hour. I guess it also depends on the terrain and how, but I mean, Belgium, a lot of the stuff is really flat, fast racing.
And at that stage, did you follow any structured training, or did you just dive into it?
I definitely chopped and changed coaches. So I didn't understand how to train properly, and definitely always been an overtrainer for sure.
Oh,
Even in my
yes.
triathlon days, I was sort of 19 years old and just jumped into doing sort of 18-hour weeks while still studying full time or working full time. Yeah, at school full time. So I wouldn't recommend that. My one tip would be actually a lot of the coaches, will give you sort of 10 to 12 hours. That's actually all you need. Definitely don't go and just rush into things, is one major tip I would give.
I think people, youngsters, take good note, because I think everyone's been there to those 20-hour weeks, but
Yeah.
that's about the efficiency that I'm hearing here from Kerry, um,
Yeah.
and and the quality. So that's really insightful. And you then ended up, I don't know what came first. You riding for South Africa, or you riding for a team in Europe, or any other place? How did how did that journey progress?
I was riding when I went over in that break. I found a Belgian club team, and then they were happy for me to ride for them the next year. And at that stage, I was on an Australian license because they had given me one for free for overseas. But then I ended up bumping into a bunch of South African girls in Belgium. And it was there that they were like, "Oh, are you related to this other South African girl who's got the same surname?" And I was like, "No, but like I was born there." And then I had returned back to Australia, and they then were doing a national tour, and they needed an extra rider. So they actually called me like, "Hey, you're South African. Are you still in Europe? Because we need a rider." And I was like, "Well, I'm not on a South African license, and no, I'm not in Europe anymore." Um, but then it was just like, well, actually, if it means more to South Africans that I represent where I'm from, well, then it makes sense to represent South Africa instead of Oz, where there's so many riders already. So that's how that sort of progressed.
Well, and then you never look back, because since then you've represented South Africa many times, um, at a very high level. And how did it feel being in those competitions like Commonwealth Games and World Championships in a group setup, in a team? Because like road cycling is a team sport, and you're there to work for the team. How did that whole setup and environment feel, for you as a young rider coming into it?
Yeah, and it's a pretty amazing, amazing experience to get to obviously go to World Champs and Commonwealth Games. Commonwealth Games was a very late call up, and I'd actually had some surgery like 2 weeks before and wasn't meant to be riding for 3 months. But to be in that environment with fellow South Africans, like you can't buy those kinds of experiences. So, it's definitely something that girls should be and boys should be looking up to and aspiring to do, because anyone can do it. Like don't put limits on yourself. The time away and traveling, like life is actually about relationships and experiences. So you want to make the most of these things.
Absolutely. And I mean, that brings me to track, because the first time that I think I met you is in Cape Town. You were here for the Cape Town Cycle Tour, and I believe you finished seventh. And this guy Tim Cox said, "Well, here's this girl that wants to ride track, because the cycle tour was on the Sunday and there was a track event, maximum velocity, on the Monday. So yeah, you got a bike from the club and you raced. You just dove into it, and that's the first time I saw you on the track. And the type of racing style was really all out. I remember the 1,500 meters. You were racing in Cat B against the men, and you put them away. You won that 1.5 race, but it was a long sprint. It was probably 1.5 lap sprint, but it shows you what can be done. And I'm not sure if that was, I believe it was your first time on Belleville Velodrome. I'm not sure if that was your
Yeah.
first time on a track bike, or
No,
how did
I
you
had been
get
on a track
onto
bike, I
track?
think,
Yeah,
once or twice before,
yeah.
but I was absolutely petrified that day. I was like, I cannot let people know that I've not really been on a track, let alone never in a bunch, because they will not let me on this thing. So it was complete, let's just absolutely fake it and just pretend I know what I'm doing.
And you made it, and at least you definitely did the warm up laps, so you survived that. You got through the warm up laps, so that went well. But fast forward, after that event, there was then definitely some potential there, beating the guys in the race. Um, and you then, I think you were racing for the Andy Schleck team, or it was maybe before that. But then you also went back on track in Europe, I believe. And how did that journey go from just trying out track here in Cape Town to also riding track bike in other places of the world?
Yeah, I think I tried the track October 2021 with you guys there. And then I don't actually know how it even progressed. I think, it was because someone had said, oh, you should go and get the South African IP record. So that was where this whole track idea stemmed from. So then I got a track bike when I came back to Oz in November, did a couple of track sessions. Then I was at the Tour Down Under in 2022, and we said, okay, well, there's a track event there, an Omnium. So there will be, some UCI commissaires. So that's a time I can try and do this record. But then to do it, the event organizers asked me as a favor, would I do the Omnium? And I said, I've said I'm going to do an IP. I don't want to do bunch riding events because I was petrified. But I said, fine, if that's the only way I can do this national record, then I better do the Omnium. So that's what I did. And then because the Omnium is obviously an Olympic sport, people are like, oh, you should go and do this, more bunch riding. So from there, I then went to Europe and yeah, entered some, I think there was C2s in Switzerland. And yeah, it was my first weekend of UCI racing. And on day two, I managed to get a podium and I left the field 3 times in the points race. And I was just like, that was not expected. And I'd never known anything about the sport. I didn't even know the rules of an omnium still then. So it was very unexpected early successes, what I'd say, but just a phenomenal experience. Like so lucky to have had the support of coaches and people around me to help me.
Now, for those of you that don't know, track cycling is a fast and exhilarating sport, but aerobic base is so important. So I'm speaking to all the roadies out there. If you've got that aerobic base, for any race longer than the kilo, it is such a benefit on the track. And then, of course, the track helps you with your power and speed. But bar the guys that do the flying 200 meters and the kilo time trial, you need that aerobic base. And I'm actually not surprised that that you did so well considering your background in endurance sports. And yeah, the Omnium is a challenging one in terms of it's 4 races. It's 4 races in one day, and it's you building up points over all these events, and the last race, the points race, the amount of points that you score in the points race gets added to the points that you scored already. So every time you lap the field, you get plus 20 points. So if you say you've lapped the field 3 times, that's like 60 points. It's a lot of points gained when you lap the field. So amazing, Kerry. And then, yeah, by that time, I don't think you were a national champion yet, but you came to Belleville, and of course I watched all the racing there, and that's also the quite an eventful evening when you won your first national title. I think it was in the points race as well. Tell us a bit how that event went for you and your experiences from there. Yeah, because it was a packed field, and everyone was on shape, and it wasn't an easy race.
So the first night we had the elimination, and that is the event I really was the least competent in. So the fact that I went in with a plan and I actually executed and won that race, I was so happy because it was just not expected that I'd be capable of executing it technically. So that was, I was just over the moon.
Okay, so
Then
you won
night
your
two
first
was,
title in the elim. Okay, wow.
yeah,
Uh, And how did you ride?
yeah.
What was your tactics in that race?
Well, I had seen somewhere in a video how someone had been second up the track and held a person just below them. And shame, that rider really wanted me to roll over the top of her, and I kept refusing. So I just, burned her out. And I don't know how it went towards the end. I don't remember. But yeah, I just managed to somehow execute it properly by staying up there. And it was,
Yeah.
it was just one of the best feelings ever, just to do well in an event that I wasn't very strong at.
But you did your homework in terms of the tactics, and the elimination is a race where it's every time you hear a bell, then someone gets eliminated. So it's bell off, bell off, bell off until there are 2 riders left, and then you get a bell in the final 2 sprint. So you never want to get blocked into the inside, which you then successfully did. And yeah,
Yeah.
congrats on that title. And
Thank
then
you.
you went you went on to more after that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the next day was everyone's favorite day in my life. So again, I really was not competent in a lot of the rules, and so in the points race, went off the front straight away. Or actually, no, it took a while to get a break going, and I was definitely quite nervous and actually panicking about the way the race was playing out. And then eventually, 4 of us got up and almost took a lap, but we stayed off the back to take some points. And that was something I wasn't aware of, that it's a thing that people do. So I actually took the lap. But then I wasn't aware that the others had stayed off the back of the pack, meaning they were still leading the race. And as soon as I took that lap, I went for another one. But then I didn't actually realize, hang on, I'm getting no points. Or I'm getting just a couple because the girls are
Yeah,
who
so
didn't
it's
take
like
the
three
lap.
away, and
Yeah, they were
now
getting the
you fourth,
points.
and you get 1 point at a
So
time.
eventually I sort of worked this out, and I was killing myself to go and get that second lap. And then just as I was almost getting close to them and I had a third of the track left, or a quarter of the track, unfortunately I was lapping a rider, and the timing was that I don't know if she was swinging up the track or down the track, but we managed to perfectly collide. And I mean, I don't remember it, but yeah, apparently I was not really conscious for a while
No, it was dramatic. It was
afterwards.
three riders just as you took your lap and gained your 20 points. Um, yeah, then three as you caught the back of the pack, one rider went up and 3 of you went down.
No, I hadn't. I hadn't
Um,
actually caught the
yeah,
pack, so it was
yeah,
just
yeah,
one rider,
yeah,
one rider
yeah,
and I. So we became hospital
yeah.
buddies.
Sure. But yeah, but then it ended up you winning your national jersey in the hospital bed because the race was stopped. and you were still leading on points at that stage,
Yeah.
from what I can recall. So that was very dramatic. But that didn't stop you from coming back to the track again. Just how did you deal with that setback and that injury?
Not well. I'm not, because I'm very stubborn, and I don't really listen. So this is again a thing that people I would not recommend is one that you should actually follow correct medical advice, and make sure you return to racing and training properly, because I'm quite stubborn. And so, I was just like, well, I want to get back on the bike, want to get back on the bike, I want to get back racing. So I sort of was just a bit all or nothing, like let's just get back to it. I really wanted to do a stage race in London. So I was like, yep, that's my goal. But chopped and changed coaches at the same time. So, the mind is powerful, and obviously you can do anything you put your mind to. So that's obviously something to keep in mind as well. But there always will be more races. So I would say, like, everyone has big injuries and big setbacks, but just plan your progression properly and do the rehab required prior to getting back into things would be the tips that I would say.
Okay. Very good advice. So next time, hopefully it doesn't happen, listen to your own advice. Because,
Yeah.
yeah. So you got back. And I mean, that was one of the challenges, but, and I'm sure you've overcome many, but what were some of your proudest moments in your career, cycling career?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a good question. I mean, as I said, the circumstances I went into the Commonwealth Games under, uh, again, like that was a really, really proud moment to get to represent South Africa. Uh, it really means so much to my family over there. And yes, I'm physically in Oz and have lived here, but it's not the same. And you speak to so many other South Africans here, and it's just like, yes, you're here, but like South Africa's home, and you still find South Africans in Australia as well. Um, so it's very proud when you can go and represent your country. Uh, and then, like I said, getting that podium in Switzerland was incredible at the C2. That was a very special moment. Uh, and then just some of the Belgian commises, the podiums I had there was very special. And also, yeah, I guess securing your first semi-pro contract. It's also a big deal. So yeah, there's a definitely been a few, and I'm just so lucky to have had the support of my family and my friends to get to experience these things and have that support of people behind me.
Well, Kerry, that's amazing. A lot of highlights. And we talked earlier about training and overtraining. And at the peak of your racing career, what would a typical training day or training week have looked like?
Yeah, so I mean, you can talk about like peaks, and I guess the best I performed was when I was doing probably the least amount of hours, as I said. So really, really specific work with John Wakefield from Science to Sport, the South African coaching company. Um, Being in Europe, super privileged that they they do sleep in more. That so you sort of wake up, you do any admin tasks in the morning. Most people would go out to ride like 9:30, 10 o'clock, whereas obviously in the southern hemisphere we're riding at 5:30 in the morning. And then I'd sometimes do some gym, some strength work in the afternoon, which is obviously a key component to bone density and explosive power. So I'd give a big shout out to Chris from Combined Athletic Performance as well. I was working with him. And yeah, it's just how to make sure you're a well-rounded athlete with some good structure, which will help you so much on the bike and your bike handling skills and injury prevention.
Yeah, I mean, just even for older guys like me, just like that strength helps you with overall wellness in life as well. And yeah, as young athletes, we never knew about that. And yeah, just as a youngster, also being able to do that is really really cool. So talking about the youth, there's a lot of young people that have this dream of pursuing sports professionally. Only a small portion get there. What would what advice would you give for youngsters that are competing on the track or competing on the road and they've got some dreams?
Slow down. Just slow right down. Have fun. When I was 18, I was told by someone that I was too old to be trying to get into short course triathlon. And that was just such nonsense, actually. And I used to beat myself up. I used to like cry myself to sleep when I was 16 that I didn't swim more when I was younger. And I was just so eager. I was like, oh, I've got to get to Europe. I've got to get to Europe when I was, 21, 22, because I was like, these opportunities are going to go, they're going to go. But, I could have just stayed training until I was 26 and working and then gone over at 28 and probably had a more successful career. So if you're a junior, and you're 13 or you're 17, just enjoy the process, build your fundamentals, have your goals outside of sport. Make sure you're at school and you've thought about your career after school, what you want to study, where you want to go, because that is what's so important and will set you up for life. And then you will enjoy your racing and your training so much more.
Wow, very wise words. And you've basically answered all the questions that I wanted to ask because it's about, yeah, how can sport help youth even if they don't go pro? So if you don't follow that route and chase it, what role do you think sport can then play in a young person's life?
The confidence it will give you for life is just something you just can't get anywhere else. Your discipline, your attention to detail, how to look after your body. There's just so much sport can teach you, and it's not about the accolades, and it's not about getting to a world champs or something. Those are just really secondary stuff. And so much of the stuff I'm saying here is stuff that I've heard over and over again, and people will continue to say over and over again. But it doesn't mean that you're at home and you're listening, you're going to follow this advice. Really, you people are going to have to go and work it out for themselves. But just if you are in that situation, you are 17, you're sitting at home, you're saying, what is she saying? Sport is everything. I'm going to go, I'm going to do this racing. I'm going to go pro. Nothing's going to stop me. Just really have a think. Make sure you speak to people who've done it and your coaches and your parents and your friends. Make sure you get those proper advice from your network around you because that's just so key to the longevity of your life, really. That those are the people who are going to be there for you through thick and thin, and that's who you need to listen to. Because also, if you talk to everyone, take everyone's advice, you're going to get nowhere. So again, I'd say have one coach, maybe have like one psychologist if you've got access to that. Just sit down, write your pros and cons, work things out for yourself as well. Do what makes you happy, not what your coach is saying you must do or your parents are saying. We want you to go pro. If it's not what you want, like find this way in the sport of what makes you happy. If it's supporting the youth, or it's coaching some people, or it's just your local mountain bike race or something, do what makes you happy in your capacity in the sport.
Wow, that's awesome. And one final question about the youth. Cycling is quite a male dominated sport here in South Africa. We're really promoting it for youth and for girls. So, what would you say to a young girl if she's unsure if she belonged in the sport?
I mean, see, I've always grown up training with guys. I've studied with guys, but growing up when I was younger, I never felt like there was anything that I couldn't do. So now there's so much social media, and girls can see that there's so many people racing in Europe, and at the bigger races there are so many girls and so many boys. So you have to realize, well, you're not the only one, really. There are lots more out there. And you can go to the youth festivals in South Africa and you can see there are heaps of other girls around. So, like I said, it's what you make it. So definitely don't be intimidated by the boys. And at the end of the day, everyone's so unsure of themselves and want to be a better rider. They're not focusing on you being a girl. They don't care. They just don't want you to beat them, actually. It's more intimidating for the men and the boys to go, oh, we've got a girl training with us today. Oh, maybe she's better than us. Take it on as a challenge. It's going to make you so much stronger, and it's one of the biggest assets women actually have is our ability to train with the guys. It means that you don't need to be somewhere else training with people to be stronger. Because if you're the strongest guy in your training group, there's nothing really to push you. But if you're the strongest girl, often there's guys who are there around you who are stronger that can make you a better rider. And that's all it's going to do is help you.
That's very cool. And I'm just looking at yourself from the first time to the last time I saw you on the track. Is that first time you went into Cat B and it was quite intimidating because it was your first time on Belleville Velodrome. So the second time you came back, we said, no, you need to ride Cat A because you were winning in Cat B already. And I must say that that racing at the Tramway Shield was fast. I mean, we were going 48 k's per hour, and you held your own with the guys in the bunch, with our Cat A guys. So, and that's it. You never know if you don't try it, if you don't back yourself. And yes, one will get stretched, but I just remember you coming off the track there, and I don't know how you felt, but it was quite something to have seen you compete there shoulder to shoulder with those guys who all ride for local sponsor teams. How did that feel?
That was really fun. I loved it. It was a really, really cool opportunity. Yeah, no, I wasn't very phased by it. I know for me, actually, like faster, harder racing suits me better than slower and where people can sprint. So yeah, but as I said, I've also had such a limit in the grand scheme of things compared to the girls I was racing against. The amount of time I'd had on track is so minimal. I think I probably had more race days than I'd ever trained on a track, which was really not that many. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, no, it was great fun being with the boys and the motor pacing and all the cool events that you guys do there.
Well, that's the thing we haven't chatted about because we've got a guy here who was in the sport when I started, and he's still there. And if there's one guy to pace you on the scooter, it's Duncan. He's got the most steady wrist on the throttle. He's so smooth. Um, so yeah, the Velodrome, Belleville Velodrome, is a high performance venue because whatever you train, it's repeatable. And the local athletes here has got such a great advantage because it's open 5 days a week, most days of the year. Um, so yeah, if you had access to that type of time back in the time you were racing, what impact do you think that would have made?
So we definitely training on the track certainly helps. So just that muscle memory, the cadence, all those sort of skills. So I'd highly say, like, if you're there, make the most of it. Make the most of the coaches available, the time on the track for sure. But also in saying that, if you can't get there and it's difficult because you have to wait for your parents to drive you or something, then just be at home on the rollers and do your sessions at home. It's not being on the track isn't everything for your track racing. So don't let that put you off. But if it's something you can get to, for sure, go and make the most of it because it's a great, safe environment to be in.
One last question. Um, what are your hopes for the future of cycling in South Africa?
Well, it definitely goes in waves of how many people are racing and how many boys and girls get overseas. So for sure, you just want to see it get stronger and then be more representation Of course, everyone would love more funding. That would be phenomenal. But put yourself out there. Go try and get your own sponsors as well. Um, it's not easy, but it is possible. And just to see the sport grow and have a better foundation from the bottom up is what's required. You can't just have a few people at the top internationally. You need to really build it from a big pool at the bottom. So if we can just see the numbers improve and increase, then it, it really, you'll support one another, and then you'll get to go and race together, and that community is what will just gain momentum and then mean there'll be more people racing overall, which is what we can only hope for.
Yeah, and you know, someone told me once, hope is not a strategy, and but we have to make it happen. And if I look at what we've done at Western Province Cycling, we've got a strategy. And what many people don't know, you've actually helped us to craft that strategy. There's a page on the strategy, Women Cycling, and how to get more women in the sport. And you've crafted that page. Another rider, Carl Bontes, helped us craft the other part of that document. And it's riders like yourself and people like him who contribute to community that actually keeps that hope alive, where we have got a strategy and you've got the clubs on the ground busy implementing the strategy. So we just marked our half year test. I've since stepped off from Western Province because I'm focusing on club. But Nigel published his half year test, and most of those things that were written down happened because
No,
people are making it happen. So
which is
thank you,
just
Kerry,
awesome.
for your contributions. Um, and I know you very busy currently. You're a career woman, engineer there in Australia, and we wish you all the best there. And it's really great to have had you on the show. And yeah, I'm sure in the future we'll see more of you. And thank you for being a motivation to the youth and sharing your personal experiences and helping also us grow from what you've learned. It was really insightful, and thank you very much.
No, anytime.